Hello everyone, how are you today? I'm Veronica Kirn with IBM B2B Cloud Services, and I'm very excited to welcome you to the first ever B2BI chat. What I'd like to do is be the moderator today for the chat. Our program is only 30 minutes, and our topic is Innovate and Generate Revenue through B2B integration in the cloud. This free-form panel discussion will involve two of our experts. We'll have real-time Q&A via Twitter, and Chandana Gopal is here with us from IDC, in addition to Peter Milne from Electrocomponents. We'll discuss the IDC white paper that was recently published and the topics surrounding B2B integration services available. Before we begin, let's talk about how you can join the live conversation. We're trying a new format today, as I mentioned, which incorporates both the Google Hangout, with the real-time power of Twitter. In addition to watching us on the video in the Hangout itself, you can also follow us on Twitter by using the hashtag B2BIChat. Feel free to interact with us or ask a question. Simply send your comments or questions on Twitter, once again, using the hashtag B2BIChat. Great. Now that you know how to be part of this conversation, let me introduce myself. I'm Veronica, the Global Portfolio Manager of B2B Cloud Services for IBM. Joining me are the two expert panelists I mentioned, Chandana Gopal and Peter Milne. Chandana is our lead analyst from IDC Research and the author of a recently published white paper entitled Driving Strategic Value with IBM Sterling B2B Integration Services. Chandana, welcome.
Thanks, Veronica. I appreciate you inviting me to this wonderful group session today. I'm excited to be here and to be presenting something that's really close to my heart about B2B, and looking forward to the next 30 minutes of discussion.
Absolutely. Now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at IDC and anything you'd like to chat about today?
Sure. So I'm a research manager at IDC, and like you mentioned, one of the areas I cover is B2B integration. In addition, I also cover managed file transfer and newly business analytics as well. So a lot of things going on, and across my portfolio, one of the things that I do a lot is speak to a lot of customers to understand what they are looking for in the technology areas that I cover, any gaps, and also speaking to vendors like IBM to understand what they have to offer and see if I can bring those two together. So I do a lot of advisory services as well as consulting services to help companies provide solutions that customers can use.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to have you here today. We know that your expertise is well known in the industry, especially in the B2B integration space. So joining Chandana and I is Peter Milne from Electrocomponents, a part of Electrocomponents in the UK. His company distributes over 500,000 products and operates in 32 different countries with over 1 million customers. So that diversity can cause some interesting scenarios, I bet, in the B2B space. But Peter, welcome, and I'd ask you the same. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your responsibilities in the B2B arena?
Yes, thanks, Veronica. Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Milne. I'm the B2B Integration Manager here at Electrocomponents. I'm based in Oxford in the UK. And I'm really excited to be part of this chat because we've been inputting into the IDC survey. And we've been working with IBM for quite a few years now, and we've seen some significant benefits with our B2BI integration. My role is actually is working with 2,500 of our suppliers that supply into the RS supply chain, and we have about 300 of those suppliers integrated via the B2BI managed service that IBM provide us, and that gives us about 80% coverage of our cost of sales. So although it's a small number of suppliers, it's a very important number. And we see many advantages of having that integration, and some of those things we're going to share with you today and talk about that.
Excellent. Well, that's why I'm so excited to bring forth the diverse perspectives of not just an analyst in the technology space, but also an end user of B2B integration services. So thanks again for joining us and spending the time. And want to also thank you out in the audience for joining us via Twitter. Once again, if you want to ask a question or a comment, we're going to spend the first 20 minutes talking with the panelists, and then we'll take live Q&A from the audience, you yourself. Remember, use the hashtag B2BI for integration chat. Okay, so let's get started. Chandana, what motivated you to analyze the ROI of B2B integration at this particular time?
Veronica, it's interesting. Oftentimes, customers come to us with a question, especially at this time with all the with everything going on with digital transformation, about why they should move to the cloud and why they should use the power of the cloud. And that kind of prompted me to look at what B2B looks like when you apply the cloud to B2B services. And so that's why, when IBM, when you guys came to us as well and said you were interested in understanding this a little bit better and understanding the benefits that customers get from moving to the cloud with respect to B2B, it made sense to go out and do this project where we interviewed customers who have made that transition successfully and understand, what kind of results they had. And speaking to all these different customers, we got a really good perspective of understanding what B2B means to be, what it means to have B2B in the cloud and the benefits that other customers, that other potential customers that are thinking about this transition as well can use to bring back to their executives as business cases and make a strong case of moving B2B to the cloud.
Excellent, great. Yeah, and as you mentioned, you worked with several of our actual B2B integration clients, took them off, asked them a lot of questions, and then came up with these results. And I can't wait to share those and also offer them to the audience today. And we'll tweet out the link if you're interested in that paper as well that Chandana has authored. So I'd like to get into some of the numbers around the paper as well. And the study itself states that 77% of organizations as of 2015 believe that they should modernize their B2B integration structure. So I want to ask both of you, what do you think is holding back the other 23%?
So if I will go first, I think a lot of times the hesitancy to start something new is just the amount of work that's required, or the unknown, the fear of the unknown. So companies might just say, we've done it so long, it's worked for us, why do we need to change? So there's a little bit of that hesitancy, especially if they are not comfortable with the idea of the cloud or not aware of what a cloud actually means. So there's a little bit of that, and I think a lot of times it's also that even though EDI and B2B have been around for a long time, there's still a fair amount of manual work that still goes on. And to make the leap from being, paper-based or fax-based to start saying, I'm going to use a cloud service is a pretty large, a giant leap for a lot of companies to think about. So I think sometimes it's just the education and the understanding of what cloud means and how it can make your B2B operations better. And so the other times it's just, why fix what's broken? And companies don't necessarily think about making that transition unless they have, a trigger or a catalyst of some kind that gets them thinking about the modernization.
Absolutely, we often hear that, right? The lack of understanding, and then the fear of what it's going to be like, and are the costs really going to be as strong as what we're presenting, for example, today in the paper? So, exactly. Peter, what about you? You've gone through this transition and actually lived it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working in this environment for a number of years now, and but you'd be really amazed. In our top 15 suppliers, we've got a couple of companies that are not participating at all in our B2BI integration, and so they're still using manual methods. And they're very large companies, and we spend a lot of money with them. So that's one of the problems that we've got. It takes the two parties to participate, and I think some companies perceive this as rather than perceiving it as a way to improve their customer service, they just see it as a cost to their business. So they're not really thinking in the same way that we are. I think the other thing is that some of these companies have got very complex structures. They've had buyouts, they've got disparate systems. But again, that's not dissimilar to in our own organization, where we use the B2BI platform to simplify everything and to unify and bring things together. So that's kind of an advantage of moving to this way of working. And then also there's all the different standards and approaches that companies take to their B2B, and sort of trying to get a grip of that is quite difficult. But again, the B2B managed service can help you sort out that complexity. So I think that's a few examples of why some companies aren't making the move.
And so I'd like to build on that. You're talking about the complexity, and Chandana, I may direct this question at you. In the report, you found that the movement to the cloud did make an impact on the internal EDI team structure and general business processes, right? Simplifying some of that complexity. The question that I have, though, is about the cultural change of working with an overseas team. How are enterprises that you work with on a daily basis addressing this cultural impact of a move to the cloud?
I think so what we've seen is enterprises that have done this successfully have managed the people, process, and technology in lockstep to do this transition to the cloud. And one of the biggest components is the people. It's managing expectations of all the stakeholders within your organization and external to your organization as well. So that means managing the expectations of your management, managing the expectations of your business users, which is extremely important, and then managing the expectations of your trading partners as well. So when you when you made a standard approach to something, it's making sure that everyone understands the process that's going to be implemented for B2B and what they need to do. So it doesn't make sense for them to try to circumvent the process and say, do this first because everything else can wait. Saying this is we have to follow this set of processes, and we need this set of this information before we can hand it off to the overseas partner to complete the to take it from there and do the onboarding. And speaking to some of the customers was really interesting, because we'd hear stories that vice president would pick up the phone and said, drop everything else, onboard this customer first, and I don't care what else you do. That just doesn't work when you're trying to implement a more standard organization within your company. So managing the expectations, I think, is and understanding the roles, what your group is going to do, what the services provider is going to do, and having that conversation be really clear across all parties is really important.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you directly, Peter, is this something that you've had to deal with and come across in your organization? I see you and hear you saying yes, yes. And how did you manage it? If you could give us a little insight into that, I think that would be interesting to the crowd.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges is bringing together lots of different ways of doing a similar business process, and all agreeing across all our markets and across all our different business divisions, the one way that you'll do this. So that's kind of the biggest challenge, but it's also the biggest benefit that we've probably seen as a result of making that change, because we now have a very standardized way of addressing all of our suppliers. So all 300 suppliers look identical to us in terms of a business process, and IBM handle the mapping and the differences that each of those suppliers have, and that's offloaded from us, and so that makes life much easier. So we can integrate companies, we can do an end-to-end integration within weeks now. That would have taken months, and it would have probably, the costs are huge when we go through to our own IT area. We also have to do business cases, prove the return on investment. So now the business is in the driving seat. So we're our own bosses. We work with IBM. We can set up our integration very, very easily, and we're in control of that. So if you can overcome those challenges, then you can get the huge benefits from it.
And I think it makes you a lot more resilient as well to business changes. So you don't have that, that if someone leaves or someone's transferred or someone new joins, if it's a process that everyone understands and is standard, it's so much easier to stay on board and to keep moving forward, as opposed to having to fight fires all the time.
Yep.
Yep.
That's excellent. So what I hear is you're more adept to change. And as we know, oh, sorry, Peter.
Yeah, and also, you've got a much better idea of the costs of doing things, the time scales, so they're all much more predictable, and it becomes a sort of sausage machine really to integrate companies. It makes life much easier.
Excellent. Well, I like to hear that. And I did want to just remind the audience, we're here live on a Google Hangout. And in addition, we're doing a tweet chat. So if you can log in to twitter.com and ask a question or make a comment, hashtag B2BI for integration chat. All right, so moving along. I'd like to learn a little bit more, and I want to ask you the tough question, Chandana. As you went through the results of your independent analysis, what did you find most surprising? What did you discover that you didn't anticipate? I mean, there was a very strong ROI, right? And for every dollar invested, $4.08, every client that you spoke with, right, had that average return. So I'd love to hear your opinion on this.
Sure. For me, it was, when you go into a project like this where you're talking about outsourcing or using managed services to do a job that was primarily done, within an organization, you always worry and you always think that you're going to, have this negative energy or negative feedback that comes in and says, people lost their jobs, they were replaced. And that was, across all the interviews, that really wasn't the tone of the interviews at all. The feedback instead that I got from talking to these customers was that they were able to use the team that was, doing EDI and troubleshooting and all of that much more strategically. So they were able to help their business ramp up, or they were able to use, they were able to be more proactive and innovative in the way they did their business. So it was amazing to see that it wasn't a matter of people losing jobs and worrying about that. It was a matter of now I can actually focus on value-added tasks because I don't need to focus on the plumbing. I don't need to focus on the nuts and bolts that I had to do before, where I was constantly just troubleshooting why a transaction didn't make it or why something didn't happen. All that happens automatically. I can focus on a much more value-added set of tasks. So for me, that was pretty insightful.
So doing more interesting work, I mean, is really
Exactly.
what you're mentioning. And Peter, have you found this in your organization or your experience?
Yeah, well, it's moved everything into the business. So, the plumbing's in place, and we haven't really had to make very large changes to that. So that's been a massive benefit to us. So, we can focus on onboarding new companies. We can think about what we're going to be doing next. And really, we've only got a very small team. There's just 4 of us, and we run the whole operation centrally. We don't have very many problems at all. One of the nice things about working with IBM is that we've got an absolutely fantastic service level. The platform is incredibly reliable. In the last 3 years, we've only had 2 single months when we haven't had 100% service level. So that's a really important thing for me because it means that I can sleep comfortably at night.
Excellent, excellent. Well, your sleep is very important, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And Chandana doesn't get enough sleep probably with her IDC responsibilities. But I love to hear that you don't have those problems and that you have truly made that shift. As you guys were part of this study and gave you're part of those results. So excellent. Well, moving right along, we've already kind of blown through our first 20 minutes of questions, and now we're going to kind of consider some questions that are out there in the audience, and questions that I know I've had other clients ask me specifically. And what's next? Chandana, you talk about this a lot in your digital transformation conversation. You've spoken at this, I think across the world, right? The IDC perspective on it. Do you I guess I want to ask that question first, is what's next? And then I have a follow-up after that, if you're game for it.
Sure. So digital transformation is truly rocking the boat for everyone. So it's a matter of whether you want to be the disruptor or the disrupted. And in order to be the disruptor, where you're the one taking advantage of the opportunity that's available today, you really need to have the underlying infrastructure in place, because digital transformation, or DX as we call it, isn't just about applying new technologies and doing old processes the same way that you've done in the past. So it's really thinking about innovating. It's really thinking about building new streams of revenue, and approaching the market not from a product or solution standpoint, but really approaching it from a customer standpoint. So what do your customers want? What do they need? And B2B lands up being at the bottom of all of that, because a lot of financial information, really a wealth of transactional information flows through B2B infrastructure. So often, it even though it might be something that companies just think of as, oh, it's in, EDI and B2B is in the basement, we really don't think about it. If you really think about where often the first problems are highlighted, if your supply chain breaks down, it's through your B2B transactions. It's understanding that something didn't happen, orders that are not coming in, or orders that came in are wrong. So it's really getting to the heart of the issue. So if you have all of those operational pieces in place for B2B, oftentimes that bubbles up as being able to enable digital transformation from your organizational point of view.
And that's great. I think you're dead on in saying where the first point is, and then I want to push you a little more and say, do you foresee a total shift to the cloud, as opposed to right now? Many organizations have a combination of both cloud and on-prem.
That's really hard to say that everything will eventually move to the cloud, because I think there's a really strong business case for hybrid, because it's not an all or nothing approach. And oftentimes there are certain things that an enterprise might want to just keep in-house for whatever reason. That's the way the expectations are with their trading partners. They may have a core business that has to be done in a certain way, so they have that established, and or that's integrated with their ERP systems, and they really don't want to change those pieces, but they move to the cloud for something that's more innovative and more the elastic. So I think the hybrid model is really where we'll see the most growth. And in terms of the cloud itself, I think there's so many different modalities. When you think about the cloud, people often think of public cloud when you first say cloud, but I think there's so many variations to it that I anticipate seeing a lot of growth in. So the short answer to your question is, I don't expect that everything will be all cloud in the next 5 years, but I think that hybrid and the idea that cloud is here to stay is very much a big part, no matter which industry you might be operating in.
Okay, and Peter, do you agree?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think certainly within our company, we will invest more and more into the cloud. We'll move more and more services up into the cloud. We need to increase the visibility that we have right the way across our supply chain. So, we have really good visibility between RS and the supply base, but now we want to extend that through to our carriers and right the way through to when parcels get delivered to our customers. So, we see the cloud as an enabler for that, to give us a visibility right the way across, and also including internally within our own ERP system as well. I think the other thing is that we'll see more and more companies moving into this space so that we can integrate with them and innovate with them and develop more and more services for our customers, and exciting services that we can add into to what we offer today because of the new technology. And as these companies embrace it, and also there'll be new companies coming in and disrupting things, and that we think that we've got the platform then to be able to take advantage of these disruptions and possibly disrupt things ourselves.
Excellent. Well, I love to hear that. So we've touched on the profitability concept, and obviously that resides in the white paper in the ROI analysis around B2B. And I'd like to ask you, though, Peter, directly. We've also heard growth, right, throughout this conversation of, having this platform. Do you have experience with perhaps, working with a different vendor and coming over to the IBM world to grow more globally?
Yeah, well, I mean, last year we were working on a project within our own company with Allied Electronics, which is our American sister company. And we've actually used the B2BI platform to integrate Allied into the RS world, and so now we can sell their products in Europe and in Asia. And we've actually used the B2B platform to integrate them into our supply chain. And so we were able to do that much more quickly, at much lower cost, much more predictably, and that's been a really successful project. So that's a really good example of how you can use the platform to enable you to move faster, to drive more profitability. And we've literally just announced our results today, so our underlying profits before tax have grown 14% this year. So I'd love to say that's all to do with what we're doing, but it's part of it, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I love to hear that. Congrats.
Thanks.
All right, so we only have a few minutes left. Please do ask your questions live or comments on Twitter, #B2BIChat. And I'd like to kind of throw out a question that's come through as well. Chandana and Peter, I'd like you to think about this, but Chandana, I kind of want to ask you directly. When we look at the roles, in the past we talked about the cultural significance of EDI and B2B teams. What about the role of data architects in the future? I mean, you talk about it in digital transformation. With all of these capabilities and with having cloud as the platform, what's their role, and do they become more rooted in the cloud?
The fact of the matter is actually data integration and other forms of integration are all kind of coming together because at the end of the day you really want to be able to have almost a single source of truth, and the cloud kind of enables that because it gives you if you're on the a cloud platform once, you're able to be connected to anyone else that's on the cloud platform almost instantaneously. But then for your specific question about what a data architect might have, what role a data architect might play, I think the idea of data architects is becoming so much more important overall, just given the volume of data that is available and the insights that people want to gain from analyzing this data and becoming more cognitive. And at IDC, we talk about the 4 pillars of the third platform and digital transformation, and big data and analytics is one of those core pillars that I think is being embedded into so many other areas within our within the way the applications that we use and the technology that we use as well. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's still a little fuzzy out there as to what role data integration will play with all the other forms of integration that we have going on within our organizations. But just as a point of reference, I'm at IDC as an analyst. I do a lot of work with the data integration team because we see a lot of those questions coming in together, a lot of that inquiry coming in together. So we do see this, these worlds kind of colliding and coming together.
Okay, and I just saw that question come through, really specific from TimTom27 about asking you, around the third platform. Yeah. So thanks for answering that on behalf of Tim. And I hate to say it, but we're getting close to running out of time already. So I can't thank you again, as we've just scratched the surface, right, of the results of the work that Peter, your company, and IBM get to do together on a daily basis, and Chandana, your expertise in the market. So I sincerely thank you for your time, and it's been really fun to hear about it. So if you want to follow the conversation after we end this chat, please go to Twitter and see all the questions and the community interactions at #B2BIChat. We'll try to go online and answer some of those questions that we didn't get to today. And once again, thanks so much for joining our inaugural B2BI chat. And I'd like to formally thank my guests for joining us from the UK and the East Coast. And Peter, in particular, that you joined us when the big match between England and Wales was going on. I know your office was very excited about it. So any update on the game?
Yes, England won 2-1 against sales. Yeah. So there'll be a lot of happy people in our office.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. And beyond just your football insight, it's been really helpful in understanding your end user perspective about the innovation around the cloud, and then Chandana as well, your direct experience and the results around the revenue upside of B2B cloud integration. So since we did run short on time, I will remind everyone again, read more by reading the results of the downloadable white paper, which includes the ROI and some of the calculations we referenced today about migration to the cloud. We'll tweet out the link again in case you missed it. And once again, thank you for joining, thanks for sharing, and thanks for having this informal, fun Google chat today. It's been really fun, and hope to do it again soon. So thank you.
Thanks, Veronica.
Bye.